Eric Mwather with Mwather.com in response to a question that I got via email as to whether this stock was a good buy and hold. And yes, I did reply through email, but sometimes it's very hard to explain things when you have them and you have to type them down. So I want to take a look at this one. My response was, the stock could be a buy and hold as long as it holds above the prior monthly closing high here at about 36. So if you set a floor and if it comes down to that level, then you can always get out of the position. And that's keeping it simple instead of complicating the whole situation. So if it comes back below the highs of, I believe was December 2013, you get out. Right now you ride the trade. Now I want to go into detail, and because I see this one can give us a good learning opportunity. Number one, a couple things. If you go back to some of my charts and some of my educational videos on primary lines, you can see that this is a primary line, and primary lines are in response to highs that are made at least either all-time highs or at least 3-year highs. So they should be at least the high or the low should have been made 3 years ago, or the best primary lines are the ones that have all-time highs. And so you take the highest monthly close and connect to the other monthly closing lows. You can see that we are moving above this trend line on a monthly chart, which means that now this is a nice entry in theory. So there's another reason why this could be a good buy. Now let's go and take a look at a long-term monthly view to see whether the price. So yes, we can see that the price here is an all-time high price. So any trend line that we can draw from there, something like this, is a primary trend line because it corresponds to a primary high. So we can use that simple logic to use even this current move here as a reason to be long the name, ask questions later. So that's one view. I'll show you a couple of other views. Now there's another view on this one here on the monthly. Now we know from our MACD understanding that whenever you have uniform activity below zero and back above zero, for example, and especially if you get a crossover above zero, so a crossover above zero on a MACD time frame, and this is a monthly chart, we are using the main MACD of 12, 26 and 9. So we see that in my eyes what I can see is developing here is something that is eventually probably going to look like that, which would be uniform activity below zero and back above it, and that would also lead to a crossover of this line somewhere here. Indication there would be that this is where you want to go long, which is right now. And like I said earlier, you can always use that stop at about 36 or here. And the actual price there is 35.50. So you can see that that's the actual closing high in December. Anything above that means it's moving above that resistance band and also moving higher. Now, if you extend the same line here, you can see that it comes very close to a prior low. So this low here and this low on a monthly basis had been support, and finally there was a break. So what we've done is we've come back and reclaimed above this lows line there. I hope I'm not confusing anybody here, but what I'm saying is if you take a look at this low here, let's even take that low. The market had held there for a while, a couple of months, finally broke down, and now it's worked its way back above the previous support line. So we can take all this in theory as being trap for those who went short, and now the market is back above that previous support line. So we've looked at the MACD, which looked like it's turning around and going to move back above zero. All right, we can also see another technical development on the monthly here, and what we see that, remember, if you are using the monthly chart, you want to own this for many months. We're talking about 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. 24 months. So you're looking at this as a long-term hold. If you're using a monthly chart, that should be the reason why you're looking at a monthly chart, to see how long you can hold on to an instrument. The one thing I did notice here is, obviously, is the fact that the stock has an opportunity now that it's trading just under 50. It has an opportunity of jumping above 50 and having another surge to the upside. As we know, whenever an instrument moves above 50 or below 50 on any time frame, you get an accelerated move. In other words, the move is going to be bigger, because that's the only way the RSI can get to move from below 50 to above 50. There's a mathematical reason for that. So by buying an instrument that is seemingly about to move above or below 50, you increase the odds for you being in the trade when you have a big surge. So the surge here, in theory, could be when it moves above 50, we are going to get another accelerated thrust to the upside, which is exactly what anybody wants. As an example, let's change gears here and I'll show you one simple example. The last time the stock went below 50, as you can see in the chart, is during this period here. And that corresponds nicely with this big down move. Alright, so let me try to show you. So you can see this candle here corresponds with this move here. As the stock went below 50, you got that big price drop. In fact, the biggest price drop most recently. So that's why you want to own it here when it's just about to move above 50, because the thinking would be the move above 50 is going to lead to a price jump. And of course, that's what you are looking at. Now, I want to show you a simple way of looking at stocks also. So we can see on this chart visually, without going into details about PE and all that confusing stuff, just very simply put, if we take the two biggest moving periods of this stock, we can see there was nice movement here between 1992 and 95. Nice movement in price. There was another nice movement in price generally here between 2000 and 2004. And then there was another nice move, let's call it from here to here. Now those three periods, which are the biggest moving periods of in the stock, corresponds with the stock's move back above 50. You can see here it jumped above 50, was a new highs, all-time highs, corresponds with this surge in price. There was another move back above. In fact, let me explain this a little differently. If you draw a simple straight line around here, on hindsight, I do admit, but it's gonna come in plain what I'm trying to explain. Ever since we moved above this line here, we can see that the stock did respond with a nice surge. We come here, we spend all this time here, and finally there is a breakout above this band of resistance, something like that. So you can draw a wedge connecting the highs and the lows, and it's only when the stock jumped above that wedge on the top side that we get this movement here that began a move higher. Hope that makes sense. Eventually the stock did come and move above this level here, which also corresponds with another price breakout from the highs, something like that, which also gave you this nice entry level there. We also come and touch the same line, the blue line, which gave you these lows, and eventually we see that the stock moved higher. So what I'm getting at here, and I know it is oversimplification, but sometimes that's what you want. You want the most simple setups. You can see that there was a nice entry on the blue line recently, which was the lows here in the lower 30s. So the stock is already responding at the blue line on a monthly chart and could be explaining why it is starting to move to the upside. And so that's one view. Okay, so we see that the three biggest moves in the stock can be explained by the RSI starting to move around this blue line, and that's where the movement have began. So that's one view. There's also another view, which, if you remember previously, I had said this at this point here, this was the biggest recorded high. And so we can see that, so that corresponds with the primary breakout, because this was the all-time high, primary RSI breakout. We come and record another high here. That remains the all-time high until, and which corresponds with this RSI high. And so we get another breakout above the primary trend line. So there was a trend connecting that monthly closing high and those highs. And so there was an entry there which began another fantastic move. There's also a move above this wedge here. It's a primary line breakout because it is connecting it to the all-time highs at that time. So this entry here made sense, and there was a nice move from there. Now we can see right now we have all-time highs here, as I discussed earlier. If we draw a simple straight line like this, any movement above a primary trend line could suggest there's more upside. Also, we can see that this high corresponds with this RSI high. So any movement above that RSI level could begin a move if the stock chooses to do so. There's another angle, which is this breakout. And if you've followed my uniformity work, this breakout here on hindsight began this nice move at about, let's call it $5.56. You draw a simple straight line from that entry, and every time the stock comes there and gives you uniform activity, you use that as a buy signal. You can see once before we came here, touch that level, which was this perfect close at about $6. The stock would go on to trade in the 40s within the next year or so. It has come back many years down the road. I did not do this. You did not do it. The stock did this on its own. It's come back here and held support. So if you're trying to find a stock that can rebound, this is the type of thing you're looking for. You're looking for stock to come back to a prior ideal breakout level on the RSI. Remember, the RSI, in my opinion, is a measure of sentiment. And we can reason it this way. If this is where sentiment changed, this breakout changed the sentiment, and we know that is a fact because it began this move, the stock came back, the RSI tested the sentiment level, stock turned bullish again, went to a very strong move. It's come back, testing the previous bullish level. That bullish level is holding. The market is holding the stock together. It's not you, it's not your neighbor. The market is doing it on its own, which means we have to give it some weight. So if the stock is going to start moving, it has to be here. Ask questions later. Eric Mwade, good luck, peace, and blessings. Mwah! Woo!